Detroit Den 313, Stephen Will here, back with another one. Before we get going, you know what to do. Bang that subscribe button, helps the channel out tremendously, and it's free, costs you nothing. So that out of the way, Steve, what in the blue moon are we talking about today?
It's April, Will. Finally, it's April. One of my favorite months of the year, all right? It's draft month. Baseball's kind of getting underway. NHL's kind of wrapping up. And we got the NFL draft in April. It's just a good month. Other than that stupid April in the D song that I absolutely can't stand when I hear watching the other teams play. But we kind of had to put this in the back pocket for a little bit. We did some free agent stuff. We did some news and rumors. We did some speculation shows. We've done a lot of stuff. We're getting back to the grind here of some more NFL prospects, some draft prospects. I think we got two guys today, Will, that I'm overly excited about. And I mean overly excited. Like when I picture these two dudes in Detroit Lions uniforms, it makes me not want to stand up in sweatpants because people will see things. So where do you want to start, Will? Let's get this going.
Let's start with your boy, man. Let's start with your boy, the big boy.
Savon Williams, TCU. If you guys watched my mock draft recently, I got Savon Williams in round 3, William. Now, 6'4", 200 pounds. Solid kid, versatile, Swiss Army knife. Just when I picture him in a Detroit Lions uniform, and I'll say the same thing I said in the mock draft show, Jameson Williams is going to want a lot of money if he keeps progressing and putting up numbers. All right, he receivers that get over 1,000 yards, they get $25 million. So if we're going into the season and Jameson Williams gets 1,400 yards, that's probably going to be close to $27 million. So if Brad Holmes looks at that and those are the numbers that J-Mo's putting up, hypothetically, I don't know that Brad's going to want to pay him because when he said the other day, paying receivers is expensive. So if you want to have a nice insurance plan and, a backup option, and you have to say, hey, Jameson Williams, thanks for your time here with the Detroit Lions. You've given us 5 good years, but we can't afford $27 million. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draft Savon Williams out of TCU, William. And how do you feel about that happening?
Savon Williams. Listen, Savon Williams is, to me, the ultimate player in this draft if you're going boom and bust, right? And that's why I think he does slide in this draft. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. He's got the speed. He's got the agility. He has everything that you need to be a really good NFL football player. What happens to him? He loses concentration sometimes and has a little bit of drops. He oftentimes, I don't want to say oftentimes, but he just has moments where he's not special as he can be. He's not meeting the expectation for what he really is. So why in the world would Steve be talking about a prospect like that and drafting a prospect like that? Because of the culture in Detroit. Steve, I think with this one, and I got to give you your flowers. You brought this one to the table. You brought this one to your mock draft. This is your guy, but I'll tell you this. I'll pound the table with you, and here's why. The Detroit Lions have a culture that's set in place. We got a guy that's catching 200 and whatever balls at the end of every practice, and then we got another guy who saw that guy doing it, and Khalif Raymond, and said, hey, Amon-Ra, I can't let you do this alone. I'm going to do that with you as well. We got a complete junkyard dog who doesn't even know that he's a receiver in Jameson Williams. Sometimes I think that he thinks he's a fullback, the way that you see him blocking downfield. The way you see him blocking downfield for guys like David Montgomery, this dude is willing to give his body and his soul to get a block that will spring one of his running backs down the field. This is the mindset. We have a receiver room of junkyard dogs, man. We got football players in our receiving room. Tim Patrick has been deemed a guy who is a team guy. He's a hard worker. He does all of the things that you would expect a veteran leader to do. I think Savon Williams needs mentorship. He needs coaching. He needs to learn how to be consistent. And he needs time to develop. Where is one of the best places to do that? I think in Detroit. You get around some of these hard freaking workers, you get around some of these athletes, you rise to the top because that's what cream does, Steve. It rises to the top. When the expectation is this, when your coach is like, I want maximum effort every day, whatever that looks like for you. And then you got guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown saying, yeah, we do maximum effort here. And then at the end of practice, we give more. We give maximum effort here. But before we get ready to give maximum effort, we show up at practice early. So practice started here, but we're here at this time. Hey, rookie, that's the expectation. And hey, don't forget my bag when you get there early. Like, that's the culture that he's going to be walking into. I think it's exactly what he needs to reach maximum potential. So for those reasons, that's what makes me interested. The good Lord said that this man is going to be 6'4", 6'5", right? The good Lord said that he's going to be 220, 225. That's already been done. Now, what are we going to pull out of him? We're going to pull greatness out of him because that is the expectation here in Detroit if you become a part of this team. For those reasons, Steve, Savon Williams to me would be a home run.
William, did you see what Dan Campbell said that his message is going to be to this team heading into the 2025 season?
I didn't. If I did, I don't remember.
Are you still hungry? Are you still hungry? That's going to be the question. You know, it's been grit. It takes more. I like this. Are you still hungry? The Lions have had a little taste of the playoffs the last couple of years. Have you guys met your goal? Is your goal to just make the playoffs, or is it to win a Super Bowl? Because I need guys that are still hungry. We haven't gotten to the table yet to eat. You got to be hungry to get to the Super Bowl. I think when we look at Savon Williams and you come into this wide receiver room and you got Amon-Ra St. Brown in there that's pissed off when he loses, I think that's exactly what you need. Like, no funny business. Like, when you come into these meetings, it's time to work. It's time to pay attention, know your job, block, get open, do whatever you got to do when you're a wide receiver. 6'4", 222 pounds of just Swiss Army knife. Just not overly athletic, but he can do a lot of things. Like, we were looking at him before we started recording, and 320 rushing yards as well. So this is just a guy. He literally reminds me of a bigger version of Deebo Samuel. Get him the ball. We saw Deebo as a full-time running back a couple years ago when Christian McCaffrey got hurt, and I don't think he loved that role. But just a guy you get the football to. That's what Savon Williams is. Now, what does he got? Like 4.48 speed, so decent speed. 1.52 yard split, 6'4", 222 pounds. Williams, there's just a lot of things you can do with this kid. He can block. He's as big as a lineman almost. Not quite, but, 6'4", 225 pounds is pretty damn solid. So I think he'd be a mid-round absolute steal. Well, if we were to do like a show with hidden gems, whatever your definition of a hidden gem is, to me, that's like rounds 3 through 7. I think that Savon Williams would be at the top of my list. Him and Kyle Williams, the two Williams kids, wide receivers, are just absolute studs. Give me either one, but we're talking Savon. I think he'd be a perfect fit. And we got a new offense coordinator. What's he going to want to do? Run the football? He's talked about more big explosive plays. I think we need to keep this wide receiver room young, hungry, and just fresh. Let's get a new face in this wide receiver room and just see what happens.
Yeah, and to those that I think are already, I'm just at Detroit in 313. We like to stay ahead of what's going to come forward. When you look at his statistics, you see 60 receptions and 600 yards. Man, like, you guys are making it like he's this or he's that, and he's only got 600 yards. Like, no. When you add in the 320 rushing yards that he has, this is 1,000-yard receiver at that point, or you know what I mean. This is a 1,000 all-purpose yard guy, right? Just because some of his touches, if his touches were on screenplays that rushed for or that ran for those 300 yards, we wouldn't be talking about him as less than 1,000-yard guy. So in that token, he's a 1,000 all-purpose yard guy. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's a guy with tremendous amounts of potential, and he's a guy that excites me, man. But there is boom or bust there. But where should a boom or bust guy go? In my opinion, a boom or bust guy should go to an offense that's already established. If he ends up being great, he's going to enhance this offense. If he ends up being a bust, our offense is still going to be good. It's still going to have Gibbs. It's still going to have Laporta. It's still going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's still going to have J-Mo. It doesn't make our offense, it doesn't make or break our offense. Those are situations when you can take risks on our boom or bust guy. Those are situations where you can implement somebody in that needs to learn how to be a pros pro. We have a bunch of pros with the Detroit Lions right now. I would love to add him to the mix.
William, you're forgetting the most important thing. The most
Talk to me.
important thing when it comes to Savon Williams, like I can't even believe that you're not even going to mention that this past season he was 3 for 3 passing with a touchdown. Like he might come in and compete for quarterback too. He just might. I trust him throwing a football more than I trust Jameson Williams. I'll tell you that. Just a Swiss Army knife, Will. If we want to get a little tricky, hey, I don't know if he played high school quarterback when he was in high school, but I mean, I'm kind of, overshooting my shot here, but it is kind of interesting that he's got 600 receiving yards, 300 rushing yards, and he's thrown the football too. So just kind of think, hey, maybe he's a little bit more athletic than we're giving him credit for, because he's done a lot of different things for TCU, who, they went to the national championship a few years ago, and then their roster just got absolutely depleted. They're not really that type of program that just reloads like the bigger name schools. So his production isn't through the roof, but that doesn't mean that he's not a damn good receiver. So I'd be absolutely over the moon if we landed him in round 3 or 4.
Yeah, same, man, same. And the last thing I'll say about production, it also taps into, you got to talk about the quarterback play. It's not like he was out there playing with one of these quarterbacks that are going to be drafted in the NFL draft this year. So it all goes together hand in hand. They're attached to a string. So Savon Williams, man, there you have it, guys. Put it in the comments. Let us know how you're feeling about him. Would you like to see him as a Detroit Lion, or is he got a guy that you're not interested in?
I'll say this, just on the topic of production. I'm guilty of this, and sometimes I get overhyped with production, but sometimes it's just not there in college. Like you referenced Rashawn Gary I think like a week ago. Very familiar with his game. When he came to Michigan, like you said, he was supposed to be like the greatest defensive player to ever come through that university. It was kind of, I think being nice would be saying he was average while he was at Michigan, but he went to the Green Bay Packers. He got like a massive contract last year. They locked him up for the future. He came to Detroit a few years ago on Thanksgiving and just wrecked my Thanksgiving and made your turkey taste not so good. So production isn't always everything, and I'm guilty of that. So going forward, I'm going to try to really, really, really clear my mindset when we're talking about some players, because there's some guys on my list that don't have great production, but I need to see and try to visualize how they would fit. So I think Savon Williams has above average production. So seeing him in a Lions uniform, absolutely sign me up. Who else you got today, Will?
Listen, I have a guy that I've been waiting to talk about. A guy who has met with the Detroit Lions, right? He met at the combine. He had an interview with the Detroit Lions. A guy that I haven't seen anyone in the Detroit Lions podcast world talking about. Not to say someone hasn't, but I haven't personally seen it. And I don't really see him getting talked about a whole lot. When I went to go watch film on him the first time, I had to do a little bit of digging to watch some film. And then I was like, this really isn't enough. So I had to just go watch games. But none other than the Virginia's Jonas Sanker, man. Safety, 6 foot from the combine. If you ask Virginia, they'll say he's 6'1", but 206 pounds, nice frame, tough, gritty football player. Jonas Sanker. Steve, how you feel about him?
I'm pretty sure he's Jalen Hurts' son. I'm pretty sure of it. I know Jalen's not old. I think he's like mid-20s. So how he has a kid that's coming into this league right now absolutely blows my mind. I don't know what he was getting after when he was a young man, but I got a pretty good idea what was on his mind, because when I pull up Jonas, I don't know how he pronounces his first name, but when I pull up his stuff and I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, this is Jalen Hurts' kid. Like, so I'm automatically interested just right there, because I know Jalen Hurts is pretty athletic. Other than that, I don't know a whole lot about him. Well, just that he's, got a daddy in the NFL too. So I'm curious to see. I am interested that he had a top 30 visit with the Detroit Lions. I'll let you kind of talk about him more, because I haven't done a full dive into him yet, and you kind of brought me onto him. So I'll let you take over this part of the show, and I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. Will.
Listen, I took some notes on him, and the first thing that I'll say is, in Virginia, he's known as Mr. Reliable. Mr. Reliable was a captain out there, which, if you know anything about the Detroit Lions in their draft, is something that runs hand in hand. They like these guys that were captains, that were leaders, that were stand-up guys who do all the intangibles correctly. When you're talking about stuff like that, you're talking about Jonas Sanker. But talking about the football, this is a dude that's good at everything. He's just good at everything. Is he phenomenal at everything? No, but he's just freaking good at everything, right? But the one thing that he is phenomenal at is tackling. And if you know, again, anything about Coach Shep, Brad, Dan Campbell, they like secondary players that can tackle. This is a guy who could play with his nose in the box. Now, is he a guy that's going to shock and shed big blockers? No, he's a guy that's going to try to evade them and get around them. That's one weakness that I will say that I see to his game. When these big boys get their paws on him, that they move him around. But for a secondary player, that's not my expectation. Like, that might be one of the reasons why Iffy was banged up all the time, because he was willing to take on some of these big boys when he's blitzing by him or whatever. He take them on heads up, or splitting them in half like you're supposed to. But outside of that, this dude reminds me, Steve, of Malcolm Rodriguez. And when I say reminds me of Malcolm Rodriguez, I mean when you cut the film on, you say, this dude's a football player. He's a football player. Going on to my notes, this is a guy who can play in the box at that nickel position, or he can play the safety position. I would say the strong safety side. He's not a deep safety guy like Kirby Joseph that's going to play the middle of the field. He's more that guy that's going to be down, sniff in the box, or picking up anything like crossers and stuff that's coming over the middle of the field. He can play some man-to-man on number twos or tight ends. He does have that ability. But when you're talking about a guy who can sniff out and read football plays, he's got that in his bag. He can flat foot, read what's going on, and pull the trigger, and he's got that burst that you want to see. Once he dissects what's going on, he's gone. When I look at this film, I gave him a different nickname than Mr. Reliable. I call him the Yak Eliminator, because as I watch him play football games, you throw those underneath routes, when he recognizes what's going on, he's already pulling the trigger. And when those quarterbacks, the good ones, are throwing the ball as those guys are breaking, so when they turn around, the ball's already on top of them. They're not waiting for the break, the guy to get open and then throwing the football. Even when those guys throw it with good timing, because he understands how to read, diagnose plays, he's right there. And these guys are gaining 1 yard or nothing on these receptions underneath. It's something that I love. I think that he is a guy who you can get in probably third round-ish and let him immediately have an impact on special teams and develop over time to compete for one of those secondary positions. Again, Brad Holmes is a guy. He doesn't draft safeties. He doesn't draft corners. He drafts DBs. Jonas Sanker, he's a DB. Mr. Reliable out of Virginia, Steve. I'm excited about him.
While you were talking, Will, I was working some magic and doing some background information here and just, doing a deep dive and, working my fingers and doing what I do best. I'm just going to say, tell me you don't see it, Will. Just tell me you don't see it. Put Jalen Hurts and Jonas Sanker in the same room together. I don't think anyone can. We need to get Maury involved, because that is 100% Jalen Hurts' kid. Let me ask you a question. Tackling, that's all great. Physicalness, that's great. What about coverage? Because I know that's what a lot of people are going to be asking. Oh, can he cover? Can he do this? Like, talk to us.
Well, the first thing that I'm going to say before I even answer that question, Steve, I'm going to say Jalen Hurts, in the case of Jonas Sanker being your
are
kid,
the father.
You are the father. You are the father. Now, can he cover? Yes, Steve, he can cover. Is this a guy that you're going to ask to cover Jordan Addison as a number two if he comes into the slot position on the same side? No, this isn't a guy that you want matching up with Jordan Addison. Now, on a certain play, yeah, absolutely. But you're not going to ask him to do that down in and down out, which if it was Brian Branch, would I have an issue with it? No, I wouldn't. So, is he to that level? No, he isn't. But can he generally cover? Absolutely. And can he grow into somebody who might be able to do that for you? I have no doubt about it. This is a guy who is only going to develop and get better as he gets into the NFL. Hard worker, would absolutely fit the Detroit Lions culture. I just don't know that he's going to be able to do that for you on day one, but he could definitely grow there. He's going to be a productive NFL player. Long as he stays healthy, he's going to be a guy who's starting for a team in the NFL, whether it's at nickel or the strong safety position. So to answer your question and not be long-winded, yes, he can cover, man.
William, when a couple of days ago we did, I can't remember what show it was, but we were talking about top 30 visits, and Is it a chess game? Is it real? This is one of those players that I think I want to be real. And I don't know that I fully am with you on, Brad scheduling top 30 visits and kind of trying to throw other teams off. I think if Brad has people he's interested in, he's going to bring them in for a top 30 visit. So Sanker being one of those guys kind of makes me think, like, what's Brad looking at? What does he see the vision with him being 2-3 years from now? Because I don't know if he gets on the field this coming season, if he's a Detroit Lion, with our secondary being as good as it is. We're pretty set at corner. Nickel positions up for battles, but I think we got 2 or 3 guys that can do that, and we got 2 safeties that probably are not ever coming off the field. So if he comes in, probably a special teamer in year 1, but the NFL, people move on. We don't know what's going to happen with some guys that are on 1-year deal. We don't know what's going to happen with Kirby Joseph in the future. So if Brad's looking at him and thinking, give him 1 year of practice, just practice and some special teams reps and maybe a snap or 2 here and there and some preseason stuff, maybe he's a guy that we could see potentially taking over someone's job in the next 2 or 3 seasons. So him being on that top 30 list is someone that we're really going to have to start taking a look at, because I think there's some clues behind there. Now, some of them I'm like, I don't really know what Brad's looking at or what he sees here. But when I think Jonas Sanker, I can see the path to why he's interested in him, being the way our team's constructed right now and our safeties and our corners and the future that's going forward and who's going to be on this team. Maybe he comes in and he's one of those next guys in that next wave of players. So I'm very, very interested. And, Brad's leaving us some clues. Well, we got to pick it up and start looking at what he's trying to tell us.
Steve, I'll be honest, man. If Jonas Sanker is available definitely through 4 rounds, but if he's available, I don't think he'll make it to the 4th round. But if he's available in the 3rd round, I'd be surprised if he don't end up a Detroit Lion. That's how high I am on him, man. He's just one of those guys, man. And obviously, depending on what we do on the first 2 picks, but he's just a good freaking football player, and he just screams Detroit Lions to me, man. If I'm being honest, so I think. He's one of those guys that I'm thinking that could very well potentially end up in Honolulu Blue. I know we talk about a lot of people, and I try not to use that often, but he's a guy, man, that I think is very probable to wind up in Honolulu Blue. But I will contest the top 30 visits thing, because Brad's just crafty. He's crafty. And then when I think about a lot of the people that we've had on top 30 visits or combine visits over the years, and then who's got drafted. Yeah, that 1st round pick, it's a top 30 visit guy or a combine interview guy. But after that, there's some chess being played. Even when I think about just exactly what Brad Holmes said, and on draft day you never know, so you got to do your due diligence. But he said when he met with Terry and Arnold, he told him straight to his face, "Man, we love you, and we would love to have you for the Detroit Lions. I just don't believe you're going to be in a position to where we can get our hands on you. But if we could, we would draft you." He told Terry on that. But he also brought in Quinyon Mitchell, who we all talked about was going before Terry and Arnold. So I understand you do your due diligence because a guy can slide in a draft, and but I think there's some games being played. And just who knows, when he talks about also understanding where the draft is going as far as where people are going to drop in his mind. He's not the only one that's looking at these top 30 visits and saying, hey, man, the Bears might be drafting this guy. The Packers might be drafting this guy. Minnesota Vikings might be drafting this guy. Who they bringing in for those visits? They know those guys are looking at those guys and seeing who you bringing in and what's going on. Crafty.
Pick 102. You're good with Jonas Sanker?
Definitely. I'd be good with it. Again, the variables are there, man. So we got to talk some variables. What do we do? Who's on the board? But yeah, I would be good with it, man. I think this isn't a great receiver class. I'll stand on that, but I think that the level of receivers that there are out there, you probably could go get one in the 3rd round or the 4th round. I apologize, or trade up and go grab one if you feel like that's something that you need to do. This safety position is something that I think that we need to address. I understand that Maddox is somebody that's going to come in and have that ability to be able to play a little bit of safety. We can move around some guys if we get in a pinch, but just addressing it so we don't have to play somebody outside of their position, or next thing you know, we're moving Brian Branch because of a situation that's going on. Let's just let guys get anchored in until what they do.
Hot question. We've talked about Kyle Williams, Savon Williams, and now Jonas Sanker. Pick 102. Gun to your head right now. You got to pick one and pick 102. Which one you taking? Without knowing what your first two picks were. Nah, I know you will. I know you too well.
He literally took the words out of my mouth. So Kyle Williams, Savon Williams, and Jonas Sanker.
Yeah, who you taking?
Listen, gun to my head right now, I got to get Kyle Williams on this team because I think he's special. And that's the bottom line. I look at Jonas, he's Mr. Reliable, but I don't see special. I look at Savon Williams, I see a guy that's boom or bust, but I'm not saying a guy that's automatically going to be special. I believe that Kyle Williams is just special. Like there's no asterisk by it. So because there's no asterisk, I got to go with Kyle Williams. But I like all three guys.
I'm with you. And I would take Kyle Williams as well, just because I think he's more explosive. But a real close is Savon, just because of how versatile he is and what he can do and his size. But and I also just think that the wide receiver position, I can get either one of those two guys on the field in some way. Sanker, I'm not sure where he fits day one. With the other two, I think I can at least get them wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 reps, depending, maybe some kick return. But Sanker, I think we shelf him for a year, and that's a good thing too. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I think my mindset is always, I want guys that I can at least have make an impact on the team. Sanker, I think we have to wait at least a year to see that. And unless we have another season like last year where we're just broken down by attrition and we're just hurting in the secondary, then he could probably get on the field. But fully healthy, either one of those receivers could probably make an impact right away.
Agreed, man. Agreed. I'm excited for all of them.
It's draft month, Will. It's draft month finally. It's been just a brutal winter. Draft season is here. You got anything else for tonight?
No, man. Let us know how you're feeling about those prospects. We understand if there's other guys out there, but let's talk about the ones we talked about today. You love them, you hate them. Where you at?
Stick around, hit that like button. We'll be back later with another show.
Peace.